At first, fishing with a tube might seem simple. You just slide a jig head inside and start casting. But there's a lot more to it than that. There are small tricks that can help you catch way more fish. And today, I'm going to break down all of those tricks by showing you the gear you need, how to rig a tube the right way, and how to fish it so you can catch more bass than anyone else. So first, let's get started with your gear. This is one technique that is very simple to fish and it's very effective, but there's a few key things that help you catch more fish when you rig it up properly. Now with your rod and reel, this is something you don't need a specialty setup for. I'm going to be using the Cashin Element Z2 Ned Rig rod. I absolutely love this rod for pretty much every spinning rod technique. I use Ned rigs, wacky rigs, drop shots, and even a tube works excellent on this rod. But the main thing you're going to be looking for in your rod is that it is a medium power, fast action. And it could be anywhere from a 6-foot to a 7'6". Anything in there will work just fine for this technique. This one's a 6'10". I like something around that 7-foot range. I feel it's the most manageable to work around anything I need to do, but it also gives me the casting distance because the longer your rod is, the further you're gonna cast. Now, as for the reel, pick your favorite spinning reel. You guys know I love the Shimano Sedona. It's an $80 spinning reel that performs top quality. The biggest thing that you want to have in your spinning reel is a good drag. So when I pull this line, it should come out super smooth. So when I hook a big smallmouth and I'm fishing it on light line, I don't break it off next to the boat. That's the biggest thing that is most important with your spinning reels. And then from there, all you have to do is spool it up with some line. I like to use braided line. It gives me further casting distance. That's where you're gonna get your true casting distance with this technique. You use 10 to 15 pound test braided line. It's actually only the diameter of like 4 pound test monofilament. So it casts a lot farther because it comes off the spool a lot easier. Pairing that up with a fluorocarbon leader, the fish will never see your line, but you'll be able to get a very far cast. And the braid is super sensitive, so when you're dragging this little guy down there on the bottom, if a smallmouth picks it up gently, you'll know that you have a bite and be able to set the hook and get those fish in the boat. And I put a 8-pound test fluorocarbon leader on here. You can go to 10 if you need more abrasion resistance. If you really need to go lighter, you can go down to 6. But with this being a bottom bouncing bait and dragging in the rocks, anything lighter than 8-pound test, I find that you break off a ton. Usually about 10 to 15 foot is more than enough, even if the water's really clear. Now we are just going to be talking about jig head rigging a tube today. I've done a Texas rig tube video already, and there are other ways to rig a tube, but the most basic and common way to fish a tube and rig one for smallmouth is using a tube jig head. So I have a few different styles here, and it really depends on what you're going to be doing with your tube. The number one thing you have to look for is the weight in your jig head. So it depends on your current, how deep you're fishing, how chunky the rock piles are. All of that is a factor when you're fishing this tube. It's an exposed hook, so the heavier weight you have, the more it's going to dig into the bottom and eventually get snagged. So if you're fishing very chunky boulders, a lighter tube head actually works better because it works better through the rock piles. I have everything here today from a 3/16, and we even have 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce here. They come in all different sizes. I think you can get them up to even like a 3/4 ounce, and you can go lighter to like a 1/8 ounce. The main thing to focus on when choosing your jig head size, you want to maintain bottom contact without getting snagged. So if you're getting snagged every single cast and you're like, I hate fishing a tube, all I ever do is get snagged, it's because your jig head is too heavy. Lighten it up and you will stop snagging as much and it'll fish better on the bottom. If you're casting it out there and every time you're like, I can't feel the bottom, I don't feel my tube on anything, and it's just floating through the water column, go a little bit heavier and then you'll find the sweet spot. You'll be able to get no snags or minimal snags. It's still an open hook, and you'll still be able to catch a lot of fish and maintain that bottom contact. What we will be using is these ones here, the 3/16 ounce size. These are going to maintain the best bottom contact for us today in that 10 to 15 foot of water range, minimal current in the river, minimal wind. That's the best size for today. Now, there are 3 different hook sizes here. When you're picking a tube head, they might have different hook sizes on the actual bait itself. So these Great Lakes Finesse mini tube heads, they have like a size 1 or a 1/0 hook. These Strike King tube heads might have like a 3/0 hook, and these ones, the Bite Me tube heads, they look like they have about a 2/0 hook in them, because that will determine what tube you can put on that jig head. Like these Great Lakes Finesse mini tubes, you could not put a 4-inch tube on this hook. It literally would not fit. Vice versa, you can't take one of these 3/0 and put it in a 2.5-inch tube. It will hang way far out of the back of the bait and it will not look natural. And lastly, we're gonna talk more about this when we actually go to rig your tube up, but like these tube heads have rattles on them. A tube, since it's a hollow bait, you can actually put things inside your tube, and that's one of the tricks we're gonna use today to help us catch more fish, a rattle being one of them. But lastly, we have to pick a tube, and we have an entire variety of them right here. One of my favorite tubes is the Strike King coffee tube, and it comes in a variety of different sizes. This is the 2.75 inch. This thing is like the size of a Ned rig, and it works awesome. This is actually gonna be the one we're fishing with today. Catches a ton of smallmouth, it's super finesse and gets a lot of bites. This pairs perfectly with that Great Lakes Finesse tube head. Now, if you wanna go a little bit bigger, either the Power Bait 3.5-inch tube or the Strike King 3.5-inch tube. These things are the standard size tube. If you're fishing on the Great Lakes for smallmouth that are goby eating fish, or you have bigger smallmouth that are 2 to 3 pound range fish, this tube is a lot better than that 2.5-inch or 2.75. It will get you a lot bigger bites. It just mimics the forage a lot better. These pair up perfectly with the Strike King tube head or the Bite Me tube head. Either one of these will fit perfectly on that 3.5. And if you really want to get a bigger bite, or you really want to fish for some trophy smallmouth on Lake Erie, something like that, the gobies are really big that they're feeding on, these Poor Boys tubes right here, 4-inch fat tube. This thing is really big, especially for a smallmouth, but not too big. They will eat this thing and you will catch big smallmouth on this. This will also fit on the Strike King tube heads as well. It's a tight fit, but it does fit on there. That size hook is perfect, and it's just a little bit of an upsize from the 3.5-inch coffee tube. There's other tube sizes that you can get as well. The Strike King coffee tubes come in even bigger sizes if you want to get a little bit bigger of a bait. They come up to a 4.5-inch if you really want to fish a big bait. But the 2.75 and the 3.5, those are the two sizes that I have with me at all times. And then the Poor Boys, the 4-inch, if I want just a little bit bigger bait, that's when I'm going to go to that one. And as for color, I keep it really simple. I pretty much fish green pumpkin type colorways and then mix in like whatever type of flake I want for that given day. So today we're going to be fishing the Magic Goby color, which is a green pumpkin with like some purple and silver, but we also have green pumpkin purple. Those are the two main colors we're going to fish today. And then we also have in the 3.5, if we get to fishing these, green pumpkin with a little bit of gold and copper. So if we have some crawfish eating fish, we can go with this color. And then the KVD Kick. This is like a green pumpkin with gold, and it's a little bit lighter of a green pumpkin. Anything in that green-brown range is going to be perfect for these fish. Oftentimes you're going to be mimicking either crawfish, small darter minnows or suckers or river minnows that lay on the bottom, or gobies. All of those bait fish are dark in color, especially on the back. So I want something that is dark in color when I'm dragging it on the bottom. Green pumpkins, browns, watermelons, any of those colors that have a dark color, it looks like it's camouflaging into the bottom. That's gonna give you the most success when fishing this bait. Now quickly, let's show you how to rig one of these up, and then we're gonna get out on the water and show you where and how to fish this bait. Now, one thing is that the jig heads, you probably wonder if you've never fished a tube before, how am I supposed to rig a tube on that if it's tied to my line? And that's where you have to tie the bait on after it's rigged. So I have my line here, but we're gonna set this aside because we have to rig up our tube first. So we have our tube and we have our jig head. This is the 275 and the little Great Lakes Finesse mini tube head that we're gonna be using. And here's where the trick comes in, that you can get a lot more bites when you're fishing this bait. You can put all kinds of things in this tube like we talked about because it's hollow. We're gonna go ahead and put some scent in here. So I have a bunch of Procure scent. I always scent my tube. They do come with the coffee scent, but if you scent the jig head when you put it inside the tube, it will leave a scent trail as you fish your bait all day long. It's just a little bit something extra that can help you catch more fish, and it helps you get the tube head into the bait because you're basically shoving it inside of a piece of plastic. So we have 3 different flavors here. I think we're just gonna go with the standard crawfish. I think they're gonna be feeding on some crawfish today, and maybe a standard crawfish scent will help us get some more bites. So all you're going to do is you're gonna open up your bottle of Procure, and you're going to put a bunch of it right on this jig head. So I just cover it in this brown gel, load it all up on there so that it has scent all day long. You can see that's covered in that Procure scent. And then we're just going to take our tube, we're gonna fold all of the skirts out of the way so that it can go cleanly into the bait, so you have that hollow opening. And I'm going to take this jig head and shove it right into the tube. And some of the Procure will rub off on the back, but some of it will also go up inside the tube. You're gonna feed this up, and you're gonna make sure your hook is resting between two of the skirts right there so that it lays pretty evenly. And then when it gets up to the front, you'll see the bulge start to come forward where the tube head is. You're just gonna keep pushing, and you'll see right there where it's bulging the hook eye, you just poke it through with your fingers, and now you have a rigged tube full of Procure up inside there to give it scent all day long while you're dragging it around on the bottom. And all you have to do now is take your line and tie this on with your favorite knot. So for me, I like a Palomar knot. I'm gonna go ahead and just tie this guy on with my Palomar. And this thing will stay on here pretty much all day unless you lose your tube. So you will lose some of them, but if you don't lose it, you'll have this thing here ready to go. And you can catch fish after fish. It's not gonna rip up your plastic or anything the way it's rigged up. Now, as you catch fish, sometimes the tube will slide up your line. You can slide it right back down and pull it right back over the eye of the hook. And if you ever want to add more Procure, you can just turn the tube upside down and stick the nozzle of the Procure right in there and squeeze it in and fill the tube body up with more Procure. So you can scent your thing all day long and keep it pushing that scent trail out there to help you catch more fish. So we're all rigged up. Let's go find us some bass and see if we can catch them on our little deadly tube here. And as always, all the gear will be linked in the description below if you'd like to check out and use any of the products from today's video. It helps support the channel a ton. And while you're down there, if you could hit the subscribe button, only 14% of you that watch the channel are actually subscribed, and I'm trying to reach that 100,000 subscriber mark. So if you could help me out with that goal, that would be greatly appreciated. But for now, let's show you where and how to fish a tube to catch the most fish. So now that we're all rigged up and ready to go, let's talk about where and how to fish this tube to catch the most fish. Now, the big thing for fishing a tube, it excels around rocky shorelines. I really like fishing it around big rocky chunk rock banks like we have up here in front of us. There's gonna be big boulders down in the water. It works on gravel banks. It works on shallow sandy flats with some rocks on it. Anything like that, it's going to work great. It does get stuck in wood because it has the exposed hook, but if you're fishing around rock and gravel, this is definitely the bait to use. Now, this bait will catch largemouth or spotted bass, but it definitely excels for smallmouth bass. This is a bait, for some reason, smallmouth bass just can't get enough of it. They love it whenever it's in front of them. I catch tons and tons of smallmouth on it every single year. And if I know I'm targeting specifically smallmouth, it's a bait that I'm going to have on. But the main thing when you're fishing this bait around is just to make sure you're keeping it around the fish, the cover, and the bait fish. As if those three things are all together, you're going to have a lot of success. Most likely the fish will follow the first two. So if you can find the cover, we have rock piles right up in front of us. If you can find the bait fish, there should be some darter minnows and other river minnows that hide around those rock piles, as well as crawfish crawling around those rock piles down there. There should be smallmouth right there with them. So if you find that rock, fish your bait around, and if you're catching some fish, there's probably some bait in the area and you know what you're looking for. If you're not getting any bites, maybe there's not any bait fish in the area or some crawfish, and you need to move to find some more rock piles. But now that we have it all ready to go, we're dialed up on a spot, let's show you how to fish it. And there's a few different ways that I like to fish this. Now, the main way that I like to fish it, it's almost like a Ned rig, and it's gonna get a ton of bites by doing this. You're just gonna make a long cast to whatever you want, and you can see that tube head's only a 3/16. I barely tossed that, and it went that far with this 4-pound test diameter braided line. You get a very far cast as long as you get your gear set up properly. Now I'm gonna watch this braid, and I like a high vis braid if you can get it so you can see when it's on the bottom. I know my bait's on the bottom right now because it just went slack, and all I'm going to do is reel up my line till I'm tight with the bait, and I'm just gonna pull it towards me. And it's just gonna cause that tube to kind of crawl on the bottom and naturally flow down the current of the river if you have your tube head size correct. Now, if you start dragging it like this and all you feel is it just plowing into the bottom and getting stuck into rocks, that's when you know you have too heavy of a tube head. This first pull is gonna tell you immediately. Now, I can tell that mine is just gently gliding down the current here, so I have the perfect size tube head on. I'm not really getting hung up, but I can feel it bouncing off every rock down there. And that's all I'm gonna do is just reel up my slack, give it a gentle pull, feel it crawl over the rocks, and then pause. And then I'll reel up and I'll start dragging it again. That is a very, very effective way to catch them. That's probably how we're gonna catch most of our fish today, just dragging this thing on the bottom. But another way you can do it, you can make your same cast, And if you know there's fish in the area, you're target casting, you're trying to fire some fish up, they might be a little more aggressive. Today we have 65-degree water temperature. They should be in a feeding mood today. I can reel up to my bait and I can hop it. Couple little hops, it'll dart up off the bottom, and the way a tube is designed, the head will cause it to spiral back down to the bottom, so it looks like a dying bait fish. So it'll snap up off the bottom and do a little spiral, and snap up off the bottom and do a little spiral, and that is going to drive these fish crazy, and you're gonna be able to get a bunch of big smallmouth when they're really reactionary and you need to trick them into biting. Smallmouth are super curious, super aggressive. So if you can snap it in front of them like this and get them fired up, most of the time they'll come grab that thing. Now there's plenty of other ways that you can fish this bait, but for me, I'm gonna do the dragging technique for 90% of the time to make sure that I'm keeping this bait on the bottom in front of a fish. And then if I know I'm around some, or I wanna fire some up or something like that, I start catching some fish in an area and want to catch more, that's when I'll start hopping that bait to see if I can get more bites. Or if I'm trying to cover a little bit more water, I might hop it a little bit quicker just to try and get one to bite, and then slow down with the drag technique. Whichever you prefer to do. If you prefer to fish faster and hop it around, do that first. When you find some fish, drag it slow. If you prefer to fish slower, drag it, and when you start catching fish, hop it to try and get some extra bites in that area. So now let's put all these tips together and see if we can catch us some smallmouth on a tube. There we go. Got one. Little guy, but this is why I throw that little tube when we fish the Pittsburgh rivers like this. Not many big fish down this way. We'll see if we can get one bigger than him though. But you can see, tube, super effective bait down in these rock piles. It drags through really, really well. They can get that bait right in their mouth. That tube hook gets them behind the jawbone. You usually don't lose too many fish when you hook them on a tube. All right, we're gonna let him go and we're gonna see if we can get us hopefully one bigger than that. There we go, got one. On this rock pile right here. Flip him on up in here. Oh, he just threw up a crawfish. It sank to the bottom, but he literally threw up a crawfish. So that we know they're eating on crawfish down there, and he saw this tube go by, thought he was getting a second meal. So we're gonna go ahead and throw this guy back, and we are gonna try and get us one more on a tube, hopefully a little bit bigger than this guy. Here's what I mean by your tube might slide up your line. My jig head actually came out of my tube, but all I have to do to fix this is just slide my tube back down to my tube head, and I can see my line is coming out this way of the tube, so I need to rotate my tube head to face with that. Basically like you're rigging it up for the first time. I'll split those skirts, and I'll go ahead and just push the eye of the bait right back through the hole that's already been created, and we're ready to go again. Those are fish, oh my gosh. Please eat, please eat. Got one, got one. Come here, buddy. Got him. There we go. We got us another one on a tube right there, just on another rock pile that's out here off the bank. You can see these big boulders, they slide down into the water and they sit right on those rock piles, eating a bunch of crawfish. And while these were not giant smallmouth, I hope this helped you understand the basics of tube fishing. And if you want to take your tube fishing to the next level, check this video out right here where I talked about another way to rig it, better fishing around wood cover and even largemouth bass. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and we'll see you on the next one.